So what you're going to be working on today is a review assignment, but look down at the bottom of this piece of paper. What's at the bottom? Some examples, some things from the stuff we talked about yesterday, because I feel like we're still a little fuzzy about it. So on these ones, it gives you a model. You are going to have to write the fraction, the decimal, and the words from that model. Okay? Notice your number 3 looks a little bit different. Mine had extra stuff that kind of got fuzzy. So let's go down to these examples. Number 1, in the decimal 0.286, what is the value of the digit in the tenths place written as a fraction and as a decimal? First, we have to decide which number is in the tenths place. Kinley?
2.
The 2 is in the tenths place. So if we have a 2 in the tenths place, notice how I'm saying it, a 2 in the tenths place. Addie J, what's its value? 2 tenths. How do we write that as a fraction? 2 over 10. But it told us to write it as a fraction and a decimal. So Hutley, how do I write that as a decimal? 0.2. Okay, I want you guys to try example 2. It's comparable. It says in the decimal 0.286, what is the value of the digit in the thousandths place written as a fraction and as a decimal? Okay, who can tell me what number am I focusing on, Elise? The 6 is the one in the thousandths place. So if I have a 6 in the thousandths place, Carter, what is its value? 6 thousandths. How do I write that as a fraction? Good job. 6 over 1,000. Who can tell me how do I write that as a decimal? Lainey?
0.002.
Think about that. There we go. 0.006. Why did I have to put 2 zeros in there?
Because otherwise, if you didn't put the zeros, it would either be in the tenths or the
Yeah, it would be 6 tenths or 600. So I needed 6 as a single digit number, and I needed to make it into a 3-digit number. If I would have put 600, is that the same thing? Nope. Elise, what would that be? 6 tenths or 600 thousandths. Those two things have the same value. Okay, example 3. In the decimal 0.333, the value of the digit in the tenths place is how many times as much the digit in the hundredths place? How do I set these ones up? Jackson?
3 over 10.
Well, it's not asking me about value, so be careful. It's asking the value of the digit in the tenths place is how many times as much? How many times as much the digit in the hundredths place? Bryson?
Draw your 2 lines.
This is our 2 lines where we're trying. What are my only 2 options for an answer, Bryson?
Write the tens on the first line and hundreds on the second.
Okay, so we're comparing the tenths place and the hundredths place. So he's saying the tenths would go there, the hundredths would go there. Braylon, can you tell me why that's right? How do we know that the tenths goes there and the hundredths goes there?
Because
On the place value chart, okay? Now, how do I decide where to draw my arrow, Augie?
You look in the problem, if it says, you look at the digits, the tenths and the hundredths place, and it's saying that how many times does the tenths place and the hundredths.
Yeah, we look at the problem. It says tenths compared to hundredths, which means we're starting at the tenths, we're comparing it to the hundredths. Aiden, when you see that arrow, what does that tell us?
How
So what's my answer?
Times 10.
It's not times 10. Elise?
The 10th is 10 times as much as the 100.
So 10 times as much. Because our arrow is pointing to the right. Okay, flip it over to the back. There's a few more examples. Example 4, in the decimal, 4.444. Why can I ask these questions on these two decimals? Why can I compare the decimal values on these two specific decimals? Augie?
They have the decimal has the same digit.
Yeah, the digits are repeated. They're all the same number. That's only true if the decimals look like that. So this one says the value of the digit in the thousandths place is how many times as much the digit in the hundredths place. Elia, can you help me set up my two lines for this one? What two places am I focusing on? Okay, the thousands and the hundreds. If we were on a place value chart, which one of those would come first? Hundredths, so we would put our H right here and our T right there. Wyatt, how do I decide how to draw my arrow? Who can help? Carter? Yeah, whichever one comes first in the problem is where I start. We are comparing the thousandths place, which means I'm starting at the thousandths, to the hundredths place. So we draw an arrow over to the hundredths. Clara, which way is that line pointing? To the left. What does that tell me about my answer? It's 1/10 times as much. Who remembers if I'm multiplying by 1/10, it's the same as doing what kind of division? Addie? Dividing by 10. Good job. Okay, the next 4 is like the IXLs we did yesterday. Blank is 10 times as much as 0.7. Remember, to show work for these ones, we start with the number we're given. And remember, that's our end point. That's at the end of our arrow. So we're going to show that our arrow is ending right there. If it's 10 times as much, which way does our arrow have to be pointing, Jackson?
From the 0 to the 7.
Yeah, it has to be pointing to the right, which means our other place that we're focusing on is that one. What do I have to replace that 0 with, Elise? A 7. So is my answer 7.7? What is my answer? Jackson?
7.0.
7.0 or just 7. Both of those are okay. So I'm going to write 7, but if you have 7.0, that is exactly the same thing. Okay, so we're replacing that. And if you have 7 dimes times 10, how many dimes do you have? 70. How many dollars do you have? 7. So 7 dimes times 10 is $7. Okay, next one. Blank is 10 times as much as 0.004. We start by writing our decimal number. And remember, we're still using our arrows. What's our end point? What's our end point here, Bryson? The 4. So I'm going to underline it. And I'm going to start my arrow, though, but I'm just making it straight because now I have to decide which way it needs to be pointing. Addie B, if it says 10 times, our starting point 10 times, which way should my arrow be pointing? To the right. How do I have to loop it to make it pointing to the right? To the 0 right in front of it, yep. So that means we would be starting there. Now this one's a little bit harder to go straight up into the answer. What do I have to replace that 0 with? Bryson? A 4. So now what do I write as my answer? This is where a lot of people can do the work. They just get confused on what to put. Ava? 0. Point what? 0.04. Good job. We don't put anything behind it. We just stop at that one digit that we're focusing on. Okay, next ones. Blank is 1/10 times as much as 0.7. Gabe, help me show my work on this. What do I start with? Okay, I write down my 0.7. Okay, keep going. What's my end point? I'm ending at 0.7. So which of those is the important digit? The 7. So I'm going to underline that and I'm going to start my arrow. I'm going to make it straight because now I have to decide which way it needs to be pointing. Lainey, which way does it need to be pointing?
It has to go behind the 7.
Yeah, it has to be, the arrow has to be pointing to the left, which means I would have to loop it this way. So that digit would be my starting point. What am I going to fill into that place, Fisher? For this to be true, for it to be 1/10 times as much as that other 7.
7.
It has to be a 7. I'm going to write it up here. What do I write as my answer? Hutley?
0.07.
Good job. 0.07. And that would be saying 70 cents is 1/10 times as much as 7 cents. If you took 70 cents divided by 10, would you get 7 cents? Yeah, so that one makes sense. Next one, Kinley, what's my work?
You write down 0.04.
Okay, 0.04.
Then you underline the 4.
Okay, that's my end number. So I'm going to show my arrow coming straight down.
And you point to the right because it's 1/10 times as much.
So 1/10 times means it needs to be pointing which direction?
The right.
So you're telling me to loop it to the right, but which way is the arrow pointing? The arrow's pointing to the left. But yeah, to make the arrow point to the left, we have to loop right. That's what's kind of confusing. But that's why I'm focusing on that which way the arrow's pointing. So Addie J, what would we have to put in that spot? A 4. And what would I fill in all the spots before that? 0. So this would be 0.004. Okay, and I felt like we struggled with those a little bit yesterday. I feel like after we went over the homework, it made a little more sense, but I wanted to go over it one more time before you guys did the review sheet, okay? So you have the rest of the class period, which is 30 minutes. That's a lot of time to get this done. If you don't get it done, it's homework, okay? But I think everybody will get it done. If you finish this and get it turned in, you can just continue working on your Christmas crafts, or you can read quietly. Weekly worksheets. It looks like I have several. I'm not sure if I have them all. So if you have not turned in your weekly worksheet, go ahead and make sure your name's on that and get it turned in. Okay? You guys have the rest of the time to work. Again, make sure your name's at the top of that worksheet before you turn it in.